OpenAI have just redefined image generation. Take a look at these examples, which are superior to anything I've seen in the past. So let's take a look at what makes 4o and its image generation so much better than previous models like DALL-E, as well as a lot more special than things like Midjourney or Flux. This model is built on top of GPT-4o, and the biggest improvement is specifically to words and sentences too. Here is an example where we're generating an image of someone writing on a whiteboard. You can see how this actually does look like handwriting. It has perspective based on the scene. It even has this reflection of a window and maybe a bridge in the background, and even this person taking a photo. And this didn't happen by accident. All of this was added as part of the prompt to generate this image. What's more, additional images were generated, such as the person turning around giving a high five to the photographer. OpenAI's O4 model has taken into consideration the context of the scene, the image before, and generated this new one with the text that was written in the background as well. And even his hand coming off here to the distance as if he's taking the photo as a selfie this time around. Here's another example of meaningful words. One here for a comic strip, which looks pretty good, as well as this one here for a scientific experiment. And what I really like about this one here is that it's an infographic, and this isn't something I've seen before either. And to take it one step further, these images can subsequently be referenced when generating new ones, like this one here of Newton's prism inside of Park Square, or then even this one with Newton himself sitting on a table in Park Square, kind of representing his, well, infographic. So let's explore exactly what's going on here. The biggest benefits come to things like text rendering, uploading and restyling, detailed directions, as well as transparent layers and character consistency. So for text, we can now get very clear examples of text inside of images. It would almost seem like now we have a text model inside of the image model, which isn't far from the truth because it's been trained on a little bit of both. This means you can really elevate the type of images you can generate where you just couldn't do so before, and maybe you needed to plug them into Photoshop to get it to this point. Multi-turn generation is one feature that is now available, allowing us to chat along with our reference images to continuously turn a cat from a regular character into maybe a character inside of a RPG like Skyrim. Or this one here where we've got a letter. We're going to reference this letter into a scene where the text remains. Or even this sticky here, where in the past AIs might not be able to generate actual PNGs, which means they don't have transparent backgrounds. Whereas now they can, and you can continue to customize this image, which does have a transparent background. Additionally, GPT-4o's combination into generating images means that it's much better at following instructions as to what you're requesting, like these icons being generated in a 4x4 grid, or this example of an empty city, or this one here of a wine glass, or this one of an empty elephant in a scene, or this math equation. Another improvement is to in-context learning, which means that the model actually improves for each image you provide it, and you can use it as context to generate new things, such as this example here to generate a tri-wheeled vehicle and then place it into a photo in New York, or this one here for a chainsaw, and use this one as reference in carving out some memories. These improvements to context and world knowledge links images to text, which means that if, for example, you have a huge code snippet like this one here, it can turn this into what the image should represent. I was impressed with this example here for cocktail recipes, because here we're just getting 4 popular cocktails and we're using them to generate these images, but also these ingredients. Now, if you look closely, they're not part of the prompt. And this again is a feature that we haven't seen in image models in the past. The improvements now allow us to do things like generate infographics with just a single line of prompt, or a guide to different types of whales with their images and text, or even matcha instructions on how to make a good, tasty matcha. In terms of caveats, this model isn't perfect. It still is going to have some issues when it comes to things like periodic tables of elements, or precise graphing, or multilingual text. Here you can see that the steps to draw a puppy aren't exactly in the right order, And if you have dense pieces of information, you are still maybe going to have some sentences which don't actually work, but this will likely only happen when you try to generate dense amounts of information on an image. With all that said and done, let's have a look at how it actually goes when it comes to generating a web design for a portfolio for myself. Here I've added in that prompt and it creates the image in, well, okay, that's a much more attractive version of me, but I'm not going to say that this web design is anything fancy. It's straight to the point and simple, but let's try out a few different other prompts to see if we can create something more unique and interesting. Now, I want to generate a prompt for a shoe store, and instead of just asking for a shoe store website, I'm going to ask ChatGPT to design the prompt around it. Then I'm going to use most of that text as a context clue to generate the image itself. And this is what it came up with. To be honest, this looks great in terms of, well, the colors, the aesthetic. It's very simple and straight to the point, but it's almost too simple. While I like the choices and the text is all correct, this isn't a website that I could particularly take. Maybe at best, this is the fundamental building blocks of what a website could be, but there's just not enough here to turn this into a real design. So instead, I'm going to see if I can continue to work with the AI to make this a little bit better. So here, I'm going to request to add a little bit more detail into the design itself. I'm going to generate maybe a description under the hero section, maybe some prices under the shoes, and changing some of the categories. Now the design itself, as you can see, has come back with those changes. It looks a little bit better, but nothing I would call a professional design. I did notice one more feature, which is that I can edit selection. So I thought I would edit the bottom line right here where this word doesn't make sense and change it into something like maybe filter. But the resulting design here didn't even place the filter in the right spot. It placed it on the opposite side. It looks like it just doesn't understand what a web design actually is. Here, I think I might take a step back and see if I can start with the fundamentals. Maybe creating a wireframe for a web design might work a little bit better in this new GPT-4o model. The results speak for themselves. This wireframe is just too simple. I'm gonna see if we can create a higher fidelity version of it, and maybe that'll give us better results. So this isn't the best looking design, but let's see if I can turn it into a wireframe on Wix Studio that I could actually use, and then maybe try and iterate on it to make it actually look like a web design. Using the wireframe that GPT-4o created as reference, I'm going to rebuild this section, starting with the logo, adding in Downs Accounting on the top, then creating the menu items so that we have here at the top, home, services, news, contact us. With that done, I'm going to build out the hero section. So this one had a H1 title. It was just the name of the business. I'm going to replicate Downs Accounting here, as well as a small paragraph section, which I can fill out a little bit later, but I'll just center for now, and a call to action, which will stay start now. Underneath that, I had the feature section. It was a 3-column design with a picture, a title, and a description. So I'm going to replicate those over here and turn them into a bit of a group that I can copy across. Now that we have replicated the wireframe, I'm going to see if I can pass this back into ChatGPT and see if it can give me better suggestions on improving the design now that we actually have one to work with. So here I've attached a screenshot of the design I've just made, and I'm going to use that as a reference to generate a new image. The first result of this isn't that spectacular. It's just had a look and created more or less what I had, but in a, I suppose, duplicate fashion. There's nothing fancy happening here besides the paragraph being a little bit improved, but these feature images and the text around them aren't great. So what I'm going to do is query the model once more to give me an improved version of the design, and here it's generating in the background. These images now look a lot better. They're actually to do with accounting. They look like stock images. We've got proper sections here with actual text that we could use, and this text actually makes sense. So while I wouldn't rank the web designs that are generated by the new image generation model to be great, at least they're a step further in the right direction. Now, one thing I did try after this was to create an infographic on how bookkeeping should happen in terms of the Australian tax system, and this generated something much more useful, something that I would actually use maybe for a blog post or an Instagram feed or something inside of a website. And I think that is the benefit of using this new image generation model, because you're going to get results that other generations just can't create, and something that maybe you don't need to now hire a designer for.